Hello there. Welcome to Find Your Voice. This is the show where we interview our thought leaders and experts, CEOs, business owners, and storytellers alike, and we discuss them and what insights they have to share with the world. And today I've got a wonderful guest with me, Chad Brignac. He is an entrepreneur with a diverse portfolio of ventures. Chad, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Joe. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. This sounds interesting. And even your title itself, the diverse portfolio of ventures, that's mysterious. So tell me a little bit more about what ventures they are and what you're an expert in.
So it's finally come down to a package that I can truly define. At one point, it was just a variety of brands. But what it's come down to is we have Pathways Group, which is what we do all of the company branding. And when we say branding, we don't mean marketing. We brand from a culture perspective. We help build culture using brand dynamics as vision, mission, principles, core values. And within that is my brand, Chad Brignac, where I do visionary strategist, consultant, author, and speaker. I also have my wife's brand inside of that. She's a Triumph champion as a stroke survivor.
Wow.
And I mention that because that leads us to the next brand is Pathways to Triumph, which is a nonprofit for a stroke recovery foundation.
Okay.
We recently launched that brand and we support stroke warriors, we call them. We went from victim to survivor to warrior. And that's our name now. It's Stroke Warriors. My wife has been a warrior. She's 5 years into her championship over stroke.
Wow.
And she just had the passion to help people navigate that journey and not lose hope. And then the last is Construction Ops, which is a software company geared towards the construction industry, where I had 30 of experience that I want to use and try to improve the environment on the software side for construction.
Wow. That's incredible achievements there. And well, congratulations on your wife. I mean, that's to be going through that and come out still strong. That's fantastic. And credit to you both on that one. I'm sure that was a tough journey in itself. So you describe yourself as a visionary strategist. So for those hearing that term for the first time, what does that mean? And how does it kind of show up in your work and life?
Yeah, I like to say you can look it up. You can chat GPT it. You can look it up on Google and you'll get a definition of it. But my perspective changes just a little bit because what I discovered about myself in this journey over the last 35 years probably is that I've always aspired to be a leader. I've always aspired to help people grow in leadership. I've always aspired to grow my own leadership. And I heard John Maxwell once said he learned early in his career. I didn't learn quite as early that you have to embody what you're going to teach. And so as I started to embody what it is that I teach, I discovered I have a unique twofold ability to see vision and funnel it down into strategy. And most people are usually either visionary or strategists. They're not a combination of both. So I have a unique dynamic to be able to understand vision clearly, not push back against it, get excited about it, but also funnel that down into power and force to the ground using strategy. But we do it with principles that keep everything aligned. So my principles in which I teach is on self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and compassionate leadership. If I go into your organization and you say, I want a strategy to reach this vision, I'm going to ask you what's the guardrails we're going to put in place that we don't lose focus or we don't abuse people along the way, because strategists have a tendency to focus on systems. Visionaries have a tendency to focus on ideas, and you have to put principles in place that you don't leave people in the dust as you're building towards those things.
That's very interesting. I mean, yeah, people are so important within a business. You've got to make sure that everyone's on the same page and happy and working together. That's great advice there. And okay, so I mean, what would you say that the Chad Brignac sort of brand is really about, and what makes it different from the typical kind of leadership or consulting work?
Yeah, so from a consulting side and leadership side, it's that visionary strategist piece. It's I want to get to know what motivates you, what drives you. Are you a strategist? Are you a visionary? Are you somewhere in between? What excites you? What's burning inside of you? And how we can align that into achievable goals that build people up. Remember, I said that my principles as I coach is self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and compassionate leadership. And I believe they have to go in that order. If you don't have self-awareness, you're not going to increase your emotional intelligence, and you can't lead compassionately. You can check all the boxes and read all the books, but unless you start to embody that, you're going to step outside of that as soon as you feel pressure. So if I'm challenged in my coaching environment, in my leadership training, those are the things that I go back to. Am I the one that's not delivering because something in me, Or is it the leader that's not delivering because of something in them or the team? That's that self-discovery part that brings you to self-awareness. And that's the
Right.
unique thing that I believe I bring, because 95% of people believe they're self-aware, but they're actually not.
Right, of course. Yeah. Interesting. So, what was the moment or the kind of time that you realized something had to change in how you were leading?
In the short version, it was the moment I woke up to realize that I literally pushed my entire family away. That's the short, dry, raw version of what
Uh,
happened. The way I discovered it wasn't from the distance that I saw gaining, because my approach to that distance was, well, I love them. I do everything for them. I provide, I work hard, I do these things, and I've taken great care of them, and that's their problem.
uh,
That was my ugly, nasty approach.
right.
That was what I call the little insecure man inside of me,
Uh,
and he needed to die. And the way I actually started to grow in this was in the process of writing Blend Don't Break. The journey began. And it actually wasn't until I finished reading Blend Don't Break. And when I mean reading, I don't mean going through the writing process. I mean, I'm on my fourth time reading my own book to help continue to transform my life. And in the process of reading it, I started to become self-aware and realize the things that I was doing that I was just totally unaware of. I say we operate on autopilot. We talk about learned behaviors, personal vows. That
uh,
just puts us on autopilot where we're not actually consciously making choices. Things coming out of our mouth we don't even realize.
uh,
And that's not a healthy place to live. So that's what I started to learn about myself. And that's where the journey began, as I started a discovery process to look inside of me and go, where, I don't like to say where did I go wrong, because we can always
uh,
find places that we went wrong. What caused me to take certain approaches? What
right.
inside of me caused me to take certain reactions? Why did I act this way? What was
Uh,
it that in me? What can change that I can help change the world?
That's fantastic, and yeah, I appreciate your honesty about that story. It's very, very kind of shown some vulnerability and been very authentic in kind of going through that and telling us that. Thank you for sharing. I would imagine at this moment in time, with everything that's happening, there's a lot of disruption going on politically and globally, and I would imagine that your insights are going to be very valuable to a lot of people that are very uncertain at the moment about things. And compassionate leadership is probably some things that some of our world leaders could do with listening to and understanding a bit more about. But yeah, it would be interesting to know your thoughts on that in our current times. What are your kind of thoughts on what's going on and how you would, what advice you would give on people that are nervous or afraid at the moment?
Yeah, the difficult part for me is getting in the political world where I don't necessarily live,
Mm.
but I did build a post, where are the mature leaders? Because if you want to see evidence of a lack of emotional intelligence and a lack of self-awareness, you can look at any political interaction. You can look at any confirmation meeting. You can look at any event within our U.S. government for sure, and around the world. What I've come to learn in my home, and in the book Blend Don't Break, we talk about it from a family perspective, and we have the greenhouse effect,
Mm.
that you're responsible to take care of your greenhouse. You're responsible to make sure that you have good cover, good lighting. You don't have holes in the greenhouse. You're not letting the foxes in. You're not allowing all of these things to impact and affect your family.
Mm.
And it's a difficult statement to say, because people are losing jobs. People are wondering where their next paycheck's going to come from.
Yes.
But the only thing you can really impact is your choices in your environment, whether that's at work, whether that's at home. You can help with your greenhouse. That is what you really have the ultimate decision making power over. So I would always encourage people to focus back on not self from a selfish perspective, but
Mm.
self from a, how can I look at the world more positively in the midst of whatever's going on around me, so that
Yes.
the people that I'm closest to are not negatively impacted by my reactions, or oftentimes my overreactions.
Mm. That's interesting. And you mentioned self-awareness there. And so how did self-awareness become the turning point in your leadership journey? And why is it the foundation for everything that came next?
It was really that I didn't understand the things that I was doing to my wife and to my kids, and even to people that I led. The way I spoke to them, the way my interactions with them impacted their life. And more importantly, what I didn't realize is that I was not learning from every conversation. I wasn't growing as a person from every interaction, both positive and negative. And self-awareness gave me an opportunity to say, I have walls up. You hear the term, well, that's my personality. My approach used to be, before I hire you, let me explain the type of person I am. I'm direct, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. And I need you to understand that before you come to work. Well, I look back now and I go, how foolish was that? My approach should have been, tell me a little bit about you. How can I serve you? How can I help you on this journey? And what is this career move? What is this job opportunity going to do for you? What's it going to give you in your life? Does it point to your purpose, to your goals? And it just got me to a place to realize that I wasn't necessarily selfish or self-centered, because I would give additional time to people. I would give them bonuses. I would do all of the things that looked like they were not selfish, but what I was not growing. I was not becoming a better version of myself. And the only way to become a better version of yourself is to look in the mirror. And many times we look in the mirror and we don't see the same person other people see.
Of course. Was this quite a quick thing for you to kind of this realization? Was it something that happened overnight, or was it over just a gradual process?
It was a process. I would say I became more aware of it overnight. As the process was taking place, I was not as much aware of what was happening, but it began after my wife had her stroke and we just had to restructure our lives. So for a year and a half, she needed full-time care. So that I had to shut down businesses and try to find a way to work from home. And obviously my focus during that season was just her, but I became more of a servant in that moment out of necessity than out of choice. And that is when I started to realize how much I had been served my entire life by my spouse and others around me. I'm a servant by nature at my church and in my workplace, and I put in the extra time and I went the extra mile and those things. But the type of servant that I had to become to care for her was just different. So that's when the process began. But I honestly didn't realize what was going on until, as I mentioned, I began to write our first book, which we co-authored, Blend Don't Break. And it's actually from the heart of our blended family. And what we wrote was something that's filled with leadership components. It's filled with relational insights. It's filled with anything that a business owner, family, anyone can pick up and use and apply some of the principles that came out of it. But it came from a very transparent conversation about me as a man and where I could have done better. So I laid my life out in that book. During the process of writing that book, my faith is what I live off of. My faith and my hope in Christ is what I'm motivated by, what I live by. And in the process of that book, I got a message that I'm going to make you a vulnerable author. So everything you put on paper is going to be built from vulnerability. And I was a little bit nervous and scared by that. But what I've seen happen in my own life and what I've discovered is my purpose now, I wouldn't trade it. So everything that we put out will be, if I'm involved in it, it's going to be from a vulnerable perspective. My next book is actually called Let's Get Naked, my next personal development book. And it's living a life of intimacy, vulnerability, and unshakable confidence.
Right. Wow, that sounds great. So let's talk a little bit about kind of what we're doing today, which is obviously these podcasts, and you're working with us, and we're going to get you on some shows to talk about your story and about your book. And what's your motivation for jumping onto podcasts and kind of sharing all of this with the world?
I want to see people find a breakthrough like I did. So building in self-awareness, building emotional intelligence, walking in compassionate leadership is the goal of Chad and Brignac brand. There's a second component to that, and that's purpose. I can now sit here and say for the first 50 years of my life, I lived for what gave me purpose. And I'm going to live the next 50 years in my purpose, because now I know what my purpose is. And a lot of us run around living for what gives us purpose instead of knowing and understanding what our purpose was. I had always had this burning in my heart to lead, to help people develop in leadership. I did it in many opportunities in construction, but it was never fulfilling me. When my wife had a stroke, I looked back and I said, what did I actually accomplish? And you can see, I wrote this just the other day, you can see my work through the landscapes in multiple states, high-rise buildings, hotels, hospitals, bridges. You can see the work that I put out in multiple states. And when I look at that, there wasn't a legacy. My family was gone. My wife and I was still together, but we were further apart than ever before. A stroke drew us together. My kids were distant, and I took ownership in all of those things. And there's successful business people that have tremendous success in the business world, and their families are a mess. And that's my heart and that's my passion, is the wholeness of life. I want to help people to live the wholeness and the fullness of life, not just a part of it.
Yes, it's very good. Like finding balance, it's quite difficult to do
Yes.
that, isn't it? So that sounds fantastic. And Chad, tell me a bit more about the book. Obviously, you co-authored A Blend Don't Break, and how did the process of blending a family and kind of writing that book shape your leadership voice and perspective?
Yeah. So my first wife had passed away at 30 years old in 2001. And I met my current wife, Jadelle, in 2001. And we ended up getting married in 2022. And she had two kids. I had two kids. It was a fairy tale when it first came together. There was so much excitement. There was so much hope. There was so much, they didn't have a dad. My kids didn't have a mom. So we were going to create this great unit and this great family. And there was a bunch of excitement from the youngest all the way to us. And just over time, the differences, the lack of communication, the misunderstanding, the unspoken expectations, the learned behaviors, the personal vows, all of these things that you develop all through life. And if you go through previous marriage, it just adds more layers to that. And then you have kids coming from a well-rooted environment, and then you're picking them up and putting them in a new environment. You're expecting them to just sprout right away, and you don't nurture them. You just immediately start parenting. It's all of those things that really started to weigh on us. I mean, we were at a point where we were threatening to leave constantly. We would get in a car and drive away and come back. But we knew about 15 years ago, I knew we would write this book. And I didn't know when it would actually happen, but we started to talk about it 10 years ago. Even in the midst of all the turmoil, we're like, there has to be a better way. Families can't go through this like we're going through. We're going to write a book. And we were like, what are we going to do? Write a book, tell them how to do everything wrong? Because that's basically what we're doing. And in 2023, I just had a moment where we moved to our current city, and it was time for me to plant and let go of whatever was going to happen next and turn it over to God. And that's what I did. And in that moment, things started to move. We met our book editor in December of 23. We started writing in March of 24. My wife and I had some of the best conversations we had, preparing each chapter, talking through each chapter. The book is 75% in my voice. My wife has some excerpts in it. Our kids each have a chapter interviewing them about our blended family. They all answer all the same questions. So just to get the child's perspective, they were all different ages. They range from 2 to 15.
Right.
So in the process of writing that, my wife and I began to have, again, some of the best conversations we've ever had. And it was talking about the bad, because it was bringing up some of the past, like, how did we do this? But we also talked about what could we have done? What would we have done? If we created these things, how would our environment have changed? If we implemented communication, if we implemented core values, if we broke down our personal vows, if we learned our learned behaviors, if we discovered what they were and we put them against each other, did they align perfectly for where we were going? If we created vision, common vision together. And then one that's a big one that's in the book is, if I drop the rope, who's going to go first to drop the rope? In a tug of war, even though someone pulls you across, no one actually wins. And we lived our lives in a tug of war. And I should have been the first one to drop the rope. And we talk about that in the book, and we talk about the greenhouse effect. And it was really just came from an ability for us to now look at what we did and how we could have and should have done it. And it's not a how-to book on how to parent or how to build family. It's a guide to say, implement these things and create your own family secret sauce. That's why the co-title is Creating Your Family Secret Sauce. Because no people are the same. We're all unique individuals. We're as unique as our thumbprints. So the first thing you need to do is you need to understand your ingredients in order for you to create a sauce. Well, your ingredients, your main ingredients, are the people inside that home. And you have to first get to understand every one of those, and it begins with self. You have to become self-aware. Each person does. Then you have to become a student of your spouse, the student of your children. Drop all the assumptions. And as you do that, you can then take those ingredients and start to put together your secret sauce using the proper timing, temperature, and balance.
Someone listening who feels stuck or unaware of their kind of place in the home and in work or in leadership in general, what would be the first kind of step for them towards transformation?
The first thing I would advise is what we just talked about, and that's drop the rope. Right. Stop pulling, stop forcing it, stop trying to close the gap in your own strength, and drop the rope. It's amazing that in order for us to close gaps in our family and in our lives, the way we actually do that is by actually letting go. We think we have so much control over what's going to happen. We think as parents, we have this ability to use our authority to direct all the choices that are taking place. And I spoke to a gentleman the other day and I said, we focus too much on the external and we don't understand what's going on in the internal. And we need to flip the script. I say we abuse our authority. We do this in business as well, but we do it as parents. We abuse our authority and we minimize our influence. We have to increase our influence within our home and we have to minimize our authority because they're growing. They're going to start making choices. Something's going on the inside. And the last place you want to be is to discover that what's been going on the inside for the last decade now turns into depression. It turns into something worse. It turns into all of these things that show up outwardly, but it's been festing for a long time.
Yes. Well, Chad, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I encourage our listeners to check out your book, Blend, Don't Break. Well, Chad, where can we find the book, and tell us where we can find more about you and everything you're about?
Book's currently on Amazon, available there in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle version. And to find out more about me, you can go to chadmbrignac.com. That's where my visionary strategist, consultant, author, and speaker pages are. We're still developing that website to add more and more. We're about to get articles on it and start to put some podcast posts out, hopefully in the next few months.
Fantastic. And just to let our listeners aware of everything, Chad's working with us and we're going to be doing our best to get him on high quality shows to share his message on leadership and compassionate leadership and to discuss the book. So keep tuning in. And thank you very much, Chad, for this conversation. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm sure you've provided some wonderful insights and value to our audience today. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
No worries. Thank you very much, sir. Take care, everybody.